good are you guys at making choices? Well, a little shaky, huh? Yeah, like you got the coffee jitters. Well, you know, what I want to talk about today is choosing life. And I want to talk about it from the context that we find in Deuteronomy, where God is telling Israel, after He's brought them out of slavery, and they become a free people, that they have some choices to make. And the way He puts it here in Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 19 is, "This day I call heaven and earth to witness against you that I have set before you life and death, blessings and cursings." Now, notice the encouraging thing from God, though. He gives a little bit of a directive in terms of their decision making. It isn't that God just says, "I say all these things and I have no input in what you should do." Rather, God says, "Now choose life." For what reason? Choose life, that you and your children may live, and that you may love the Lord your God, listen to His voice, and hold fast to Him. For the Lord is your life, and He will give you many years in the land He swore to give to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now, in this context, there is so much there about God giving not only the directives, saying there are basically two choices. Right hand, left hand, as it were. You have two choices, either life or death, blessing or cursings. But here, I want you to choose life. And here are the reasons for that you should choose life. That you might live, that you'll love the Lord your God with all your heart, your children will live, all of these things. So when you take this into account in terms of making choices, you realize that God is very, very actively involved and wants to be actively involved in this regard. Now, we also know that from the book of Genesis that God gives us an example of choices being made. He gives us an example of the choice that mankind made. And we realize that from the book of Genesis that God gave man free moral agency. That is, He gives them a right to choose and to make choices. So choosing is not a new thing for God to do in giving them that choice. And it wasn't new that God should give Israel that. And it isn't new that God should give you and me, you and I, choices as well. And we have to ask ourselves, well, how good of a choice maker am I? And why do I make the choices that I do make? Are there some criteria for making choices? Because we're faced as never before with decisions, till we just get tired of deciding. And we tend to fall back on, as it were, well, I made this decision before, and therefore I've got the answer, and I can just go from there. But, you know, it's kind of interesting in life sometimes that the decision that you made yesterday may not be the same good decision today based on a few different set of circumstances that you think, well, everything, you know, one size fits all kind of decisions. It generally doesn't happen that way, not if a person is truly walking as God wants them to walk. So is there a guide for us in making decisions and choices? I think about a world, for example, that is trying to make decisions without God. Think about your life, my life, without God. What kind of decisions would you make? And Richard talked about a group of people from Israel that are both blind and deaf. I would suggest that we would fall very much into that category without God in our life, with the ability to ask God, to ask direction, to come to our own conclusions, our own philosophy about, well, this is how you live life, and you know, this is what I choose for my life. And we see that happening in the world today, where people are making choices based upon their emotions, based upon misinformation, based upon prodding and pushing by society, the world, and I would suggest as well, as in the book of Genesis, as in the book of Matthew, a force, a spiritual force that the Bible describes as the devil, that does have an impact upon the decisions that we make, or would like to have an impact on the decisions that we make. Anytime that we can not invite God into our decision making, we may inadvertently be kind of allowing Him to have more impact on how we decide things in our life, or we think that we can do it on our own. So decisions in a world without God, to me, are scary. In fact, we kind of see an example in the book of John chapter 3, which I want to turn to quickly to talk about enlightenment. And I think about enlightenment, I think about the Renaissance period after the medieval and the Dark Ages and all of that. You have a period of an enlightenment where knowledge increased, but in our world today, knowledge is increasing so rapidly, and you just imagine what it must have been like back then, but for us, even more so, because we're able to see, to know, to understand things, how things are put together. As I've mentioned before, we're able to see further into the universe than ever before. We're able to see into the small creation as never before. We're able to understand things like never before. I was marveling at an interview in which I was seeing a discussion around the human brain, development of the brain of a child. And what was interesting is how that a child can learn, and learn as a few months old. But what was interesting about what I was able to understand from it, from the Harvard professor and some others on this interview, is they did some teaching of children, one in which the child was taught something via the television, and the other one via the same thing, via a person and all of that. Bottom line, the child learned absolutely nothing from the television. But they interact with people. It's just an incredible way of learning, and which I think says a lot for the development of a child. I would suggest in the same way, our interacting with God and recognizing that God is about a God of personal relationship, that we learn a lot from God. That we just don't learn from books or facts or whatever. That God is much more than just a factoid, kind of a flat screen TV with no personality. I don't care how much depth perception or 3D you might have, it isn't the same as something that is real. And to us, God is real. He is the creator, the maker. So it tells us, though, in the book of John, chapter 3 and verse 19, this is the verdict, this is the conclusion that he'd come to. Light has come into the world, but men love darkness instead of light because their deeds were evil. You think about our decision-making, and it's amazing how things impact the way in which we decide things. Especially if we're doing what we ought not to be doing, we make decisions accordingly. Everyone who does evil hates the light and will not come to the light for fear that his deeds will be exposed. But whoever lives by the truth comes to the light so that it may be seen plainly that what he has done has been done through God. So there's not a fear when a person has God in their decision-making process and they're seeking God and they want to come to the light. They want to be enlightened by God, because I would suggest that we don't know very much apart by ourselves. That's what I would suggest. Now, yes, we do have a lot of facts and we're able to discover things, but I think we miss a lot. So the results of coming to decisions without God is kind of the world in which we live. People hate people. People kill people. I mean, look at our local papers and gangs and shootings and killings and rapes and robberies and all kinds of stuff that are going on. Greed that just goes on, uncontained.
Feeling the blues today, or tired of life already? Do you have questions about life, or need spiritual advice? We can help. Log on to worldwidechurchofgod.com or wcgfairfield.blogspot.com and stay connected to reality. The Worldwide Church of God in Fairfield, Santa Rosa, and Modesto are located in the San Francisco Bay Area, regarded as the most prosperous region in the United States. We believe Jesus Christ when he proclaimed in Matthew 6:24 that serving God is more important than serving mammon. We welcome everyone to come and worship and fellowship every Saturday at the times listed on your screen and on our website, worldwidechurchofgod.com.